Top 10 countries black people are fleeing. What's forcing them to leave so fast? Black people are fleeing some countries, and not just for a vacation. We're talking passports stamped, bags packed, and peace of mind in the carry-on. Why? Because when systemic racism, economic challenges, safety concerns, and a total lack of opportunity join forces, the message is loud and clear. This ain't it. Across the globe, black communities are facing everything from government neglect to social invisibility. And it's sparking one of the most quietly powerful demographic shifts of our time. This isn't just about travel. It's about survival, dignity, and refusing to settle for being treated like a second-class citizen. Some countries say they're welcoming black immigrants, but their policies and street-level realities tell a much darker story. Add in racial profiling, limited access to resources, and zero political representation, and yeah, you'd flee too. So, which countries are black people actually leaving in large numbers? That's the million-dollar question, and the answers might surprise you. Stick around to the end because the full list is coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Smash that like button, subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian, and ring the notification bell for more eye-opening journeys. Let's jump right in. Number 10. France. You'd think a country that proudly screams liberté, égalité, fraternité would actually practice what it preaches. But for many black people in France, that motto feels more like false advertising. Let's keep it real. Freedom and equality don't hit the same when you're constantly dodging police checks or getting followed in luxury stores like you're auditioning for Ocean's 11. Here's the hard truth. Institutional racism is alive and well in France. Studies show black residents are 20 times more likely to be stopped by police than their white counterparts. 20 times. That's not policing, that's profiling with a French accent. Add to that decades of housing discrimination, employment gaps, and the ongoing reality of being packed into neglected suburban ghettos, aka banlieues. And it's no wonder so many are saying au revoir. But it's not just the harassment, it's the erasure. Black contributions to French culture? Ignored. Black voices in politics or media? Practically invisible. And let's not even start on the education system, where colonial history is taught like a bedtime story, with all the uncomfortable truth edited out. So what's the move? A growing wave of young black professionals and families are heading for more inclusive European nations, think Portugal, Germany, or the Netherlands, or even returning to the African continent where they feel they can actually breathe. Now let's pause here. Have you ever lived somewhere that constantly made you feel like a foreigner? Even when you speak the language and know all the cultural references? That's the everyday experience for many black people in France. And they're tired. So yeah, France might be the land of croissants and cafes. But for black immigrants and second-generation citizens, the cost of belonging is way too high, and that's why it lands at number 10 on our list of countries black people are fleeing. Still holding on to your seat? Good. Because the next one is even more shocking. Let's keep going. Number 9. Brazil. Brazil has samba, carnival, and some of the most stunning Afro-Brazilian art, music, and soul on the planet. But behind the colorful parades and tourist filters, there's a darker, more painful reality. Black people in Brazil are not thriving. They're surviving, and many are done with surviving. Here's a gut punch for you. Over 56% of Brazil's population identifies as black or mixed race, making it the largest black population outside of Africa. Yet somehow, black Brazilians make up more than 75% of homicide victims. You heard that right, more than 75%. It's like being the backbone of the country, but still getting treated like you're disposable. And let's talk about inequality so obvious it might as well be neon lit. In the job market, Afro-Brazilians earn on average 40% less than white Brazilians. They're underrepresented in politics, overrepresented in prisons, and routinely targeted by police. In fact, if you're black in Brazil, your chances of being stopped and shot by law enforcement go up dramatically. Now tell me, how can a country so rich in black culture still be so poor in black equity? It's the ultimate irony, right? You see, for many black Brazilians, the dream of progress has been replaced with a harsh wake-up call. No amount of capoeira, caipirinhas, or carnival glitter can cover up the systemic racism deeply embedded in the country's institutions. Generations are tired, and a growing number of Afro-Brazilians are seeking refuge in countries that offer actual equity, not just pretty slogans. So, what do you think? Would you stay in a place where your culture is celebrated, but your life is constantly under threat? That's the internal tug-of-war many Black Brazilians face today. Number 8. Algeria. Let's not sugarcoat this. Black people in Algeria are being pushed out, and not with a polite wave and a goodbye croissant. We're talking raids, forced expulsions, and open hostility like it's part of the national pastime. Here's the scene. You've traveled from sub-Saharan Africa looking for opportunity, maybe just a chance to breathe and build. But the moment you arrive in Algeria, bam! You're treated like an illegal shadow, a walking offense. The government has made it crystal clear, Black migrants are not welcome. And they're not being subtle about it. Crackdowns are frequent and brutal. Security forces conduct door-to-door raids, snatching people from their homes or workplaces, tossing them into overcrowded trucks, and dumping them at the border like yesterday's trash, with zero legal process. No trial, no paperwork, not even a warning. Just get out. Now tell me, how do you build a life in a place that doesn't even pretend to see you as human? How do you stay in a country where just walking down the street as a Black person can get you detained or worse? Reports from human rights organizations have called this out. But let's be honest, Algeria's not losing sleep over it. The government paints all sub-Saharan migrants with the same brush: criminals, burdens, outsiders. And the public? Many have bought into it. Xenophobia is practically served with breakfast. Meanwhile, Black communities are constantly under threat, living in fear, without protection, without dignity, and without the basic things most people take for granted, like housing, jobs, or just the ability to exist without being harassed. So, it's no wonder people are fleeing. Would you stick around in a place where your skin color is treated like a crime? The exodus speaks for itself. Number 7. Libya. Libya, where modern-day slavery isn't just a metaphor. Yes, you heard that right. Slavery still exists in 2025, and Libya is wearing that shameful badge like it's stuck in the 1800s. For thousands of Black African migrants, Libya isn't just a transit country, it's a nightmare dressed up as a migration route, complete with human trafficking, torture, and actual slave markets. You're probably thinking, slave markets? In this century? Sadly, yes. CNN exposed it back in 2017, but the horror hasn't stopped. People are still being bought and sold like livestock for as little as $400. Would you risk your life crossing a desert just to end up shackled in someone's basement? Libya has become one of the most dangerous corridors for Black migrants trying to reach Europe, especially since the fall of Gaddafi in 2011. The country has spiraled into lawlessness, where armed militias, smugglers, and traffickers call the shots. And let's be clear, Black skin is the easiest target. Once caught, many are thrown into detention camps, where food is scarce, abuse is rampant, and freedom is a distant dream. The United Nations has documented widespread torture, rape, and extortion, yet the world barely flinches. Now think about it. How desperate do you have to be to flee war, walk through deserts, dodge armed men, and still end up in chains? That's not migration, that's survival under siege. And what's worse? Many governments, instead of helping, are quietly funding Libyan authorities to detain these migrants so they don't make it to European shores. Out of sight, out of mind, right? For Black migrants, Libya is a dead end disguised as a shortcut to opportunity. And those who manage to escape, they never look back. Number 6. Saudi Arabia. Here's a reality check you probably won't hear on your typical travel vlog. Saudi Arabia may promise jobs, but for many Black Africans, it delivers exploitation wrapped in gold plating. You see, beneath the skyscrapers and glitzy malls lies a brutal system that makes survival a full-time job, literally. Enter the kafala system, a sponsorship setup that sounds harmless on paper, but in practice, it's a one-way ticket to modern-day servitude. Workers can't leave jobs, switch employers, or even exit the country without permission. It's less employment and more prison with a paycheck, minus the rights. Now, guess who's most affected? Black African migrants. Thousands, especially women working as domestic help, report unpaid wages, 18-hour workdays, physical and verbal abuse, and in many cases, seizure of passports. Human rights groups have called it out for years, but change moves slower than traffic near Mecca during Hajj. Let's break it down. Over 2 million African migrants live and work in Saudi Arabia, and many of them are trapped in cycles of exploitation with zero legal protection. Got a complaint? Good luck. Speaking out often means detention, deportation, or worse. So ask yourself, how much is a paycheck worth if it comes with fear, surveillance, and zero freedom? The dream of sending money back home turns into a nightmare when you're sleeping on kitchen floors and being yelled at for eating leftovers. The racism? Oh, it's baked into the system. Many workers report being called slurs or treated as subhuman. Blackness in this context isn't just visible, it's weaponized. So yeah, while Saudi Arabia may offer opportunity, for many Black Africans, the real opportunity lies in leaving and never looking back. Quick pause. If this video is opening your eyes or hitting a nerve, go ahead and smash that like button. Drop a comment below and let me know, which country on this list has shocked you the most so far? And if you're new here, welcome to Virtual Travel by Brian. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss more eye-opening content. Now, let's get right back into it, because trust me, the next country is a whole different level of "you've got to be kidding me." Number 5. Turkey. So here's the kicker. Black people are fleeing Turkey, and not because they ran out of baklava. It's because being black in Turkey often feels like walking around with a target on your back, where your skin tone makes you suspicious before you even say a word. Let's break it down. Racial profiling is practically a national reflex, especially in big cities like Istanbul and Ankara. African migrants, particularly black men, get followed in stores, pulled over without cause, or questioned in public like they're on a crime show. Spoiler, they're not. And don't even get me started on the job market. Many black migrants, especially women, are trapped in domestic and service work, where exploitation runs wild. Long hours, no days off, low pay, or no pay at all. It's giving 1950s housemaid energy, minus the sitcom charm. Reports have shown that African women in particular are vulnerable to abuse from employers with zero accountability, because, guess what? The law often looks the other way. Now here's the strange part. Turkey wants to be seen as a modern, global bridge between East and West, but socially, it's still acting like anyone darker than a walnut is an exotic alien. Black communities in Turkey often face isolation, social exclusion, and daily microaggressions that add up fast. And while Turks might be quick to smile in your face, trust and inclusion, that's a whole different story. So let me ask you, how long would you stay in a place where people admire your music but not your presence? Where you're good enough to entertain but not good enough to belong? Thousands of black immigrants have asked that same question and answered with one-way tickets out. Number 4. Ukraine. War is terrifying. But what if the scariest part of a war zone isn't the bombs, but the way people treat you while you're trying to escape it? That was the reality for thousands of black people, mostly African students, stuck in Ukraine during the Russian invasion in 2022. Let's not sugarcoat it. Black students were literally being pushed off evacuation trains, left behind at border crossings, and told to wait, while white Ukrainians were ushered to safety. It was like watching a VIP line at a nightclub, except instead of bottle service, it was life or death. And the kicker? This wasn't some isolated event. The racism in Ukraine didn't start with the war. It just got broadcast to the world. Before bombs ever started falling, many black immigrants and students were already struggling with housing discrimination, limited access to education, and daily doses of "you don't belong here" stares. So, let's pause. What kind of country invites you to study, takes your tuition, then ghosts you at the first sign of trouble? Thousands of black students paid for their education in Ukraine, but when it came time to evacuate, they suddenly became invisible. Reports from Human Rights Watch and other groups highlighted widespread racial disparities in treatment at borders, where some African nationals were made to wait days without shelter, food, or information. And that wasn't just bad policy, it was a message. You're not one of us. And let's be honest, for many black people who made it out, the trauma didn't just stay at the border. It followed them. Now, more than ever, black communities are saying no thanks to Ukraine. War or no war. That's why Ukraine makes it to number 4 on our list of countries black people are fleeing. Because fleeing wasn't even a choice. It became a necessity. Not just for survival from bombs, but survival from bias. Number 3. Russia. Let's not tiptoe around it. Russia is one of the most openly hostile environments for black people in the modern world. We're talking about a country where being black can get you assaulted just for existing in the wrong metro station. Yes, it's that real. While you might be dodging potholes in some countries, in Russia, black immigrants are dodging actual hate crimes. And I don't mean side-eye and uncomfortable stares. I mean full-on physical attacks, racial slurs shouted in broad daylight, and organized violence by skinhead and far-right extremist groups who apparently missed the memo that it's not 1939 anymore. And the worst part, there's little to no legal protection. The police, either indifferent or, in some cases, just as hostile. There are countless reports of authorities brushing off racially motivated assaults like it's just another Tuesday. Justice system? More like just us. Let's get into some numbers. In the early 2000s, over 50 racially motivated murders a year were being documented. And while the government insists things have improved, black residents and students still report high levels of harassment and violence. So, do you really need a graph to tell you it's not safe when black people are walking around looking over their shoulder just to grab groceries? Many African students who came to Russia for education quickly realized they'd signed up for a survival course instead. Between visa issues, xenophobic professors, and being the only black face for miles, life there can feel like you're stuck in a cold, racist episode of Black Mirror. So, here's a question for you. How long could you live in a place where just stepping outside feels like a social experiment in tolerance, and you're always losing? For many, the answer is clear. They're packing up, heading out, and warning others not to follow. Number 2. India. Here's the wild part. In a country with over 1.4 billion people, somehow being black still makes you stand out way too much. In India, racial prejudice doesn't hide in the shadows. It strolls around in broad daylight, shouting slurs and staring like you're an alien from another planet. Ask any African student who studied there. The moment they land, they're either exoticized like some walking Afrobeat playlist or treated like a criminal in waiting. Harassed in markets, refused service in restaurants, followed by security in malls, and often stared at like they just stepped off a spaceship, and not in a friendly, cool hairstyle kind of way. It gets worse. Black people in India are regularly stereotyped as drug dealers, prostitutes, or scammers. No proof needed, just skin tone. This dangerous perception has led to violent incidents like the 2017 mob attack in Greater Noida, where a group of African students was brutally beaten in broad daylight while bystanders recorded instead of helped. Now here's a thought. How would you feel walking into a classroom or grocery store, constantly on edge because of how the people around you view your existence? That's the daily experience for many black immigrants and expats in India. There's also deep cultural isolation. Unlike many countries with long-standing African diasporas, India lacks significant black communities, which means very few safe spaces, little support, and a whole lot of "why are you here" energy. The result? Many black students and professionals leave long before their visa expires, because surviving bias isn't on the syllabus. According to reports from Human Rights Watch and other NGOs, African nationals in India face some of the highest levels of unaddressed racial discrimination in Asia. And trust me, when someone says they'd rather risk starting over somewhere else than stay where they're constantly dehumanized, you better believe it's serious. So yes, India lands solidly at number 2 on our list of countries black people are fleeing, not because of the spicy food or crowded streets, but because respect, safety, and dignity are missing from the menu. Number 1. China. Let's get straight to it. China tops the list of countries black people are fleeing, and not by a small margin, because while the red carpets roll out for foreign investors, black people, they're being shown the door, literally. You might remember the headlines back in 2020 when COVID-19 wasn't just spreading across China, it was exposing some of the ugliest racial double standards. In the city of Guangzhou, which has one of the largest African communities in Asia, Black residents were being evicted from their apartments, denied entry to hotels, refused service in restaurants, and forced to sleep on the streets. Why? Because someone decided that foreign equals infected and black equals foreign. A wild leap with real consequences. It wasn't a glitch in the system, it was the system. Even before the pandemic, anti-black discrimination in China was well documented. From job postings that explicitly say no black applicants, to African students being followed by police or harassed in public, life in China as a black person means always being one stare, one false accusation, or one sudden policy away from losing everything. And here's the kicker. China loves African business. African diplomats, traders, and students are welcomed on paper, but on the streets, they're treated like threats. The same country building infrastructure across Africa can't seem to treat African people with basic respect at home. The hypocrisy? Unmatched. One African resident in Guangzhou put it plainly, "It feels like we're not welcome anymore." Not because of anything they did, but because of who they are. So here's a question for you. How long could you stay somewhere that sees your skin not as beautiful, but as a biohazard, where your rent can be canceled by your landlord overnight, not because you didn't pay, but because you look foreign? That's the exhausting reality many black residents in China are done putting up with. That's why China ranks #1 on our list of countries black people are fleeing. The message is loud and clear, and black communities across the globe are answering it by choosing dignity, safety, and opportunity elsewhere. Which country on this list surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. From discrimination to danger, from silence to survival, this list wasn't about shade. It's about truth. Don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to Virtual Travel by Brian for more bold, honest, and eye-opening content. Until next time, travel smart, stay safe, and never settle for less than you deserve.